Kurt back here, and Aunt Marion, Faye, and we got my Aunt Sharon Dameron, renowned artist Anita Fields, and Justice Terry Moore. Glad that, and Ruby, we're glad you all made it here. The reason why we're here today is, we the Osage Nation Counseling Center is who I'm with, and we have a grant called Project 988. And if you're not familiar with it, it's the National Suicide Crisis Hotline. And the purpose today for this seminar is to offer a little bit of insight and a little bit of guidance for maybe some people that haven't always been around. They don't have a medium to access this stuff the old way. They live far away, or they live in urban areas that, it's, especially with plane tickets and gas prices, it's just hard to make it back. And today we kind of look at offering some insights in how to be Wahzhazhe, what it means, and how these different things can help your mental health. So there might be some people in crisis, and maybe they don't have an Osage identity, and it puts them in a mode of crisis. And they say culture's prevention. So this is what we're looking towards doing today, is offering a little bit of cultural insight through first-hand account through Dr. Stephen Pratt. And I can't think of anything better. He is my dad, yes, but he's Dodaha Wadanka. He's the head committee man. He's a road man, tail dancer. Sat through many different seats through all these different ceremonies that we have through our Arbor, Native American Church. He's been fireman, T-boss, everything. He's gone through it all, and there's no better for Zonzolis. There's not much better to go on a first-hand account than for Dr. Pratt here, and we're glad that he's here, and he's going to offer us some of his expertise. Although he is Dr. Pratt through academia, he's also Dr. Pratt in Indian ways as well. He has an Indian PhD, as we like to say. And before we get started as well, I'd like to have a moment of silence for a young man was found murdered, Jackson Yerby. He's Sackham Farms. He was 17 years old, and they found his remains, and he's been missing for a year. And we just want to think of his family at this time, his mom Shima and his stepdad Robert. So we'll just go to that moment of silence right now for Jackson. Thank you all for bearing with me. I appreciate that quite a bit. So at this time, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Pratt.
Dani, wabi hoi pe mi she. Dali vatsia. Ampa de omaka seka idali. To address everybody here today, and appreciate you coming and allow me to be here with you. And also want to express, say Happy New Year to you. If you all don't know this, Osages, this is our new year. When the grass turns green and things change, this is when we celebrate that. So most of us, we already had our spring meeting, and know a lot of our other fireplaces are going to be gathering. And so it's a good time for us to recognize and know that this is a new year, and we're getting ready to go into June. Again, I want to recognize here too, Sister Sharon and Wahzhazhe Everett, and Sister Nita, Terry, and Ruby. Glad you're all here with us. And also want to acknowledge our culture and language class. They're here, and I'm very proud of them. We all kind of go together everywhere. We're very supportive of each other. If somebody has something to do, everybody shows up. And that's why they're all over here, kind of gathered in one area. I don't know why, but that was gathered like that. So, but I'm very thankful that the counseling area asked me to be here today. And and they asked me to talk about identity, but specifically Wahzhazhe identity. And that is that what it creates and what it is for us. And that's why there are different types of identity that we have. And just as you heard Joseph say that when sometimes that's what happens when our identity is threatened, or when it is we're not in uncertain areas, it causes a lot of stress for us. And we seek some way to reduce that stress. And sometimes it comes in negative ways. And that negative ways be in alcoholism or in drugs or in just anything negative. And sometimes we see that in suicide, as you're all aware. Indian children are the highest rate of suicide. So there's something going on. And so that's what we kind of want to talk about, the notion of identity. And that's how strong identity is for us. And it's something that it's what we wake up every day and you decide what I'm going to be today. What is this identity that I'm going to have? And that's for many of us is that when we wake up Wahzhazhe. And but what does that mean? And that's one of the hard parts of it is that how do we define that? And no one ever really knows. And so that's what we're going to talk about today about how we are created this way. And there are different types of identity that we have. You know, like all of us, we have different identities. You know, you may be a parent, you may be a certain age group, certain music, something that you like. Like I said, that we determine what we're going to be every day. When we get dressed, you're making a statement to people. You're making a statement to the world and to yourself. And as we go out and about people, it shows them who we are. And that is, but there's a lot more that goes within that. And that's what we're going to be discussing today and looking about how this is created. You know, identity is something that is not inherent. We're not born with a tribal identity. Now, we're born with certain DNA. You know, we're born with certain characteristics or traits. But to have this identity, it requires that we have to learn it. It's not inherent. So how do we learn it? Well, we learn it through either our parents, we learn it through our surroundings, where we're at, we learn it through our religion, we learn it through media, we learn it through TV, we learn it through a variety of areas. And these are all unconscious. You know, daily we're going out to these things. And so somebody might say something to you, but when they say this, whatever it may be, it's reinforcing who we are. It's creating these. Maybe they're saying you shouldn't do this, but they don't explain why. And that's what we're talking about. That's what identity is. And so we have all these. And so, but how do we learn to be Osage? And that's what we'll be discussing today, is that you might start reflecting upon yourself. Now, how did you learn? Where did you learn this from? And how is it created? Well, one of the things that we have to have is that it's not created independently. It requires other people. I mean, I can self-identify, which I do. I can check a box and say I'm Osage, or I say I'm Wahzhazhe. But for it to really happen, I have to engage in it. I have to talk to other people. And I have to be accepted by others. So they confirm credibility upon me. They accept me. You know, you've all had this conversation. Somebody will come up and they might say, well, I'm Osage. And you might look at somebody else and say, who are they? How do we know they're Osage? And so that's just this kind of a game we go through. We play. We test each other out. And it's like anything else with our education, with everything we may be. We can say we're something, but what qualifies it? What creates that? And so this is what we are. But to maintain this identity, that becomes very difficult. How do we do this? And so that's going to be what we're talking about today. And I was thinking about this, preparing, and I remember when I went off to college, I was very fortunate. I was very blessed. I was raised by full-blood Osage Indians. And in our house, our Osage language was spoke every day. And I often say this, I said, every day was a ceremony, it seemed like. My grandmother, she woke up in the morning and she prayed to the sun. She blessed herself. She prayed and she sang every single day. And that started our days. Then she would cook. And then she would prepare food for us. And then if something happened, no matter what, is that we would engage somehow. And then she always talked about this. And she would explain things to us. But she always said this. She said, the old people said. And, you know, my grandmother was very old. But she talked about old people. So you can imagine she was talking about those who came down here before her. And that's where we start learning this. And when I went to college, she gathered everybody together. She cooked a meal, as we do. And then she told me, she said, I want you to go and learn those white man ways. And she said, you need to learn his ways. She said, but don't forget who you are and where you're from. And so that kind of stuck with me all throughout my life, because what she was saying, what we're talking about today, is that we're going to be engaging with, we're going to be around different people. And we're going to be exposed to different values, different beliefs. We're going to be exposed to different worldviews. But as we start exposure, it's going to cause us to question who we are. It causes us to question what we were raised with. And these are things that are tacit. They're not open. We just learn them as we go along, as we're talking about. Like use of time, whatever it may be, is that this is what we've learned. And so when it comes into contrast with other people, it causes us to start doubting who we are. And then we start looking for the answer for that. And so that's what she was telling me. She said, in her own way, she said, you're going to be exposed to a lot of things. She said, you're going to be, and it's going to cause you to question who you are. But she said, always remember that. If she went further, she used to say, other tribes, she said, they got good ways. She said, they have ways of doing things. But she said, we have good ways too. And she said, always remember that, to always go to your own ways. That's what she talked about. And so that's what part about what being our culture is. That is about how we act, how we interact, and what the day is created by. And so when you wake up, is that, who am I going to be? What is my role today? And for many of us, it's your career, it's what you're going to be. But it's also where we can become both. That doesn't mean that we have to stop being Osage to be something else. We can do it at the same time. But that's the thing about it, is that acknowledging and wondering, what is this thing that we're talking about called Wahzhazhe? And that's something, I use this term Wahzhazhe more often, because that's who we are. And it really bothers me that we go by Osage. That's not our term for our people. Wahzhazhe is, but that's what the government put on us. And so we've taken that. And so, but I think more of that, the old people, they were Wahzhazhe. They were the ones that knew all these things that we're trying to pick up and trying to learn now. And so as we go about, and how do we create, how does this identity come about? Well, it comes about in our interactions. It comes about even our greetings, how we greet one another. Leave taking, how do we leave someone? These are things that, where did you learn that? You learn it probably by mistakes. We learn to respect it. It's like we did today, beginning, is that we want to respect certain people here. We respect our elders. That's what our culture is. And we're taught to always do that. Ever notice we're kind of getting away from that now? We're kind of getting away from a lot of our cultural behaviors. If you were to ask a lot of people, what's the Osage value? What are Osage beliefs? What's the Osage worldview? How do Osages view time? Would you really be able to answer them? I think probably most Osages wouldn't, because we don't ever take time to understand it or to know it. But once you do, that's when you have this pride about being who you are. That's like with these language classes. The most important part of identity is language. If the language is gone, that culture ceases to exist. So our tribe is making great strides in trying to help us reclaim our language. And there's nothing better is that when we're able to express ourselves, to address the Creator in our own language. That's where that pride comes in. That's how and then so that's what we're trying to do. But also by our language tells us what is in our culture and what is not. It tells us what something is. If it's important, we've got a word for it. Basically, when people say, "Well, what does that mean?" I said, "Well, a lot of our language is slang. We had to develop this when we came here because we didn't have those concepts. For example, we didn't have months when we moved down here. We didn't have time of day. We follow by the sun. And when we talk about our meals, we talk about "Gracias one nombre." That's breakfast. That means when the sun is up. "Midote one nombre." It's when the sun is straight up. That's when we have lunch. "Padre one nombre." We don't say 5 o'clock or 4 o'clock. And even like using time, something else that comes in is that we use it differently than Western culture. We have something called event over time. For Osages, for us, the event is more important than the time it takes to be there. For example, when we have a dinner or something, is that how long does it run? It runs as long as it's supposed to. When will it stop? It stops when it's supposed to. We don't have a set time. But the important thing is that we are there for this event. And like I said, we're starting to lose a lot of things. A while back, I started noticing that a lot of people were getting up and leaving dinners that we might have, in particular funeral dinners. And they would get up and leave. And sometimes they would come up to me and they would say, I've got to go. I've got an appointment I would need to get to. And I say, you can't. They'd look at me like, how dare you? I've got something important to go to. I said, you can't go. No, I knew full well they were going to go anyways. But the point is that, no, that's not Osage. You're taking non-Osage behaviors into an Osage context. But that's simply because they didn't know. So finally what happened was we started announcing before like dinners. We'd say, you're here until it's over. We're here to support the family. And if you need to go early, go now. Just to avoid that of people getting up and leaving. It was rude. That's rude behavior. It's disrespectful. That's disrespectful to the family. So you see, all of that one act is respect. There is a notion of time, how we engage one another. All that's coming out. And by doing that, by engaging that, and by being situated there properly, we're being Osage. We're being Wahzhazhe. That's what happens we're witnessing this event. That's why we go. So this is just like a very small example, but you think about it, during the day, all the things that we do, everything has a meaning. Everything has a purpose that we do. But for the most part, we don't know about it. We don't know why. We just go along with it. We just do what we do. And so this is part of what we're talking about today, is that these are things that need to be learned, need to be taught, is that we don't just pick it up. We usually make a mistake. You ever notice that? How do you learn something? You get bawled out for it. You've done something wrong. Or I just even like looking. We don't look at people like they do in Western culture. I taught speech, and I would have to tell them, look at everybody in your audience, maintain positive eye contact. But then when I go home, I can't do that. And I remember we were driving along once, and my mother said, "You see that cow out there, that pasture?" Yeah. She said, when you look at people, when they're talking, that's what you look like. So that stuck in my mind all this time ever since then, So I was like, I have a lot of trauma from my childhood, It was never explained nicely about something. Don't look, it's just not polite. That's what we do. And also, the other thing they would say is that, don't be looking around. You're going to see something you didn't want to see. That I have witnessed many times. And I said, don't be looking around because there is something that we don't want to see. So you think everything, verbal, nonverbal, we talk about language. This is all the parts of who we are. This creates who we are. But, we have to be aware of this. We have to be told about this, what this is. And that becomes a problem for us today. That's identity. And that, there's so much about going into who we are. Just like right now, that with the elections going on, all of our people. Something that we've adopted, which we can't help, is social media. And I don't know if you all notice this, but all the candidates, almost all, they got an evite, I believe they call it, on Facebook, and they will post to say, you're invited to a dinner. And you know what? We're expected to go. We're expected to be there because that's how we invite today. But for traditional Osages, that's not an invitation. How do you invite traditional Osages? You go to their house. If you really want them there, you go to their house. And once you do that, they're locked in. Somebody said, are you going to that dinner? I said, yep, I got to go. How come? Because they came to my house. I'm locked in. Somebody said, are you going to so-and-so's dinner? Nope. How come? I wasn't invited. It was on Facebook. I don't respond to that. So even like we're talking about just all the invitations. You know what? When we tender an invitation, it is rude to say no. Now, think about all the contrasts we have. In white culture, everybody wants to RSVP. A lot of my friends ask me, said, when you put these dinners on, how do you know how many people will be there? I said, you don't. I said, you just fix enough. I said, people, then you'll have enough. Well, that's rude. What about they bring somebody? I said, well, more the merrier. That's just what we do. We don't require, why don't you ask people to RSVP? I said, because I was told it's rude. That you're taking away somebody's ability to make a decision. That's why it's rude. It's like an order. You're telling them to be there. We don't do that. We respect other people. You see that word keeps coming up all the time, respect. So that's really important in our culture. And as we go through, is that every day that we have to, there's even one of our expressions, kilihope. That means respect yourself. That's probably one of the most important meme I guess we could have today, is respect yourself. And I said, by doing that, is that you're going to have a good life. You're going to be able to be engaged with other people. You're going to be accepted. And so that's what that term respect, that's what we try to do. So that's a large part of who we are. And so if we talk about identity, that's what it is. And these are ways that we carry in unknowingly into each interaction that we have with others, whether they're Osage, non-Osage, whether they're from another culture or whatever, a different age, is that we're carrying this in to all of our interactions. And people are evaluating us, and they're determining whether or not we are appropriate or inappropriate. When I was in graduate school, we were evaluated a lot on being social, because both of us going to be professors, and so they wanted to see if we could get along with each other. So we had, like a lot of our graduate students would get together, have activities, get together, and we were being pretty much evaluated on that. And so they'd always come up to me and they said, well, we're going to have something this weekend. I want you to be there. I said, okay, I'll be there. Well, in Osage, appropriate Osage behavior, we never say, no, I won't be there. We say, I'll be there. But you know this, and what does I'll be there mean? No, I won't be there. Yes, I'll be there. Maybe, if something else doesn't come up, I'll show up. So it's the other person, the Osage person, we recognize that. And so we understand. So we don't say, where were you? So this was always, I didn't know about this other behavior. All I knew was about, you just said yes. Finally, after a few occasions like this, kind of like a committee came up and said, we want to know what's wrong. I said, I don't understand what it means. Well, we keep inviting you. You keep saying you'll be there, but you never show up. So, I was being appropriate, I thought. But see, so I wasn't able to handle that, negotiate that. So finally I learned that, okay, here's another set of behaviors that I need to do. But even I was so good at that, I would even say, yeah, I'll come. Want me to bring something? And then they say, well, we're waiting there for those chips. Sorry, I didn't know that. I was locked into that. So these are, if you talk about that, everything that comes along, this is our behaviors. But we're starting to lose those now. We're starting to lose that a lot. Just like we said, I understand social media. I think it's great. I couldn't live without my iPad or my iPhone. I'm the same way. But on certain occasions, certain things, I expect you to treat me with respect because of my position and of my age. And that's just the way we do. It's just how we engage with each other. So these are parts of what we're seeing fade away now. But I'll say there are some who have and still do this, and that's what not only are they politically and personally engaging with everyone now, but also there's about 6 candidates that are going around to people's homes, going around and asking appropriately. So that's who got my vote. That's who I think is going to be representing us both, is that they represent both. They're both out to be engaging appropriately in white culture because they're going to need to do that. But also they know how to engage appropriately in our Wahzhazhe culture. That's their identity. That's who they are. So these are just a few examples, but if you think about this, is that all day long, this is what we are. We're testing out one another. It's something we call competency. Do we have like a cultural competency? And we look at people, some do and some don't. Who has that? Well, they're able to engage us and be engaged in these types of behaviors that we're talking about. When somebody is talking to you, you're listening for these cues. We're listening for these certain things. And that starts telling us of who we are and how should I treat them. And so, it goes on and on from there. But there's so many behaviors, I would say, we talk about our worldview. It's like I said, our spiritual sense of who we are. We're very spiritual people, and we go to the Lord at all times. We are prayerful people. And so that's who we are. But, and we're not going to get away from that. But that's part of who we are. But we kind of lost that too. Is that, we used to have a certain way of asking. When we want somebody to pray, we would have go to them. We usually go to their home, take tobacco. It's a very important act. But we don't do that hardly anymore. We're starting to get away from these things. And why is that? Because simply people don't know how to do that anymore. So if we kind of think about it, is that all this list of behaviors, it's endless. If you think about right now, you think about, well, what does that mean? And there's not only is that I'm talking about being Wahzhazhe, but there's like several types of identity that we have right here on our reservation area. And this is where we get into problems with that, is that how do we, and like we talked about, and you heard with the Joseph here explain that, we need to find help. And we need to go back to our cultural ways. And that is to help, those who are stressed. And that's when this identity comes in, because once our identity is questioned, is that we start going into like a tailspin, a nosedive, is that we start searching for something, we start looking for something. Y'all might remember the first time you went to college, and is that how everything was different, how everybody was different, and everything that you knew, you're starting to question. And then you start thinking about, well, how do I negotiate this? Well, then we start finding other things. We start finding other ways to replace what it is of our traditional teachings. Because to be traditional, that takes a lot of work. It's real hard. We have to do this every day. We have to wake up in the morning this way. And so let's talk about the different types of behavior that we have. Is there's one that I'm calling our Wano Okha, a type of identity that we have here. Wano Okha. And that is our traditional Osages. And this is a person that has been raised traditionally, somehow, some way, generally in their homes. They probably were raised by full-blood Osages, and they spoke the language. And they were taught, implicitly, it wasn't open, but they were taught how to engage in these behaviors. Something, do y'all remember this? When you were a child, they would tell you to go shake hands with an older person. You didn't know who they were, but say, go shake hands. And, but you do that because that's the way you start learning how to be respectful. That's what they were teaching us all the time. And so this is what that generally is that this is our elders, the teaching of our ancestors, the teachings of our Wahzhazhe. This is where we have learned that. And this is the ones that still carry on our traditions, carry on as the way they were supposed to be. They make baby boards. They take a baby board to a family. That's the way that, we start learning cognitive style. That's what's in our identity. We learn by observation. We learn by watching. We don't learn by asking questions. We can follow up with questions, but how do we learn? We learn by just watching. We learn sitting at the end. That's why in the Elon school, when we bring young boys in, they sit at the very end. And they told me, they said that they're going to watch all these men, and they're going to watch and they're going to learn. By the time they make it up to the top, they're going to know all these, what they're supposed to do. They're going to know how to engage in these rituals, how to engage in this process. In our meeting house, the same way. You sit against the wall, and you watch, and you listen. You listen to how people talk, how they pray. And then, and when our turn comes, then we know how. So that's how, even our cognitive style. So that's how it's taught with these Wahzhazhe Okha, with the old people. And this is a culture that this is the most difficult to achieve. You have to learn. You have to be present. You have to go and be there. You have to be there on time. When we say on time, being that whenever it begins, we're there till it ends. We're there for what the event is. We're there event over time. And then when we start learning, we start understanding this. So that's I said, this is a person who lives their life as Wahzhazhe. I wake up, that's who I am. And if you think about this morning, is that you wake up in the morning, is that difficult to do? Is that very hard to wake up and say, I'm Wahzhazhe? We have nonverbal symbols. Everybody has car tags, or they might have a T-shirt or a cap or something. But to live your life, to have your values and your beliefs, and to the way that you acknowledge other people, and the way you interact with other people, how we greet other people. What we do is that, are you aware of that? Are you consciously, this is the image that I want to present. This is who I want to be. And a lot of times you're going to be corrected. A lot of times is that you might not be doing it appropriately. But still yet is that you're learning how to do it. That's what we're trying to do. So that's when I think that's the most difficult, most time-taking, because you have to be involved. And then the other part is that how do we teach this? How do we teach these values and behaviors, these things I'm talking about, to others who don't understand them? And that's the question that we're going to have to address later on. Another type of identity is I call the Seka Nika Shia. Seka Nika Shia. And that's like our New Age Osages. And the New Age Osages is that they love to come for 4 days in June. And this will kind of, they love to take their vacation because I'm going to go back. And a lot of times they only go to one district. You know, when you're put in, you're supposed to go to every district, every song, every dance. But today, there's a lot of them just come and they show up for 4 days maybe. A lot of them say they only dance at night. It's too hot in the afternoon. And so this is what I call New Age. And they enjoy being Osage. I like it. I like having a t-shirt I get to wear around. And I like the food. But then that's about the only time I'm Osage. When I go back, I have different responsibilities. You know, see, some people might be a coach. You know, a coach in Little League or something. That's my identity. That's more important than being Osage. I can't be there for those dances. I have to coach. So there are other identities, they take over. So the Seka Nikashia is that it's only when it's convenient for them. They're proud of who they are. I'm very proud. I'm glad that I'm Osage. But it's just not a big part of my life. It's just that I can come back in 4 days. Maybe I can even be there for all dances, but generally not. And I don't attend anything. I don't come back for head games or for dances, anything else. That's my only time. And so that's fine. I mean, if a person has that identity, that's all you can spare because, you know, like I said, we have other identities which are important. And it just depends on which most is important to us. The next one I have is Wahzhazhe Nikashia. I'm sure most of you all know what Wahzhazhe is. Money. And that is, I hear, you probably have this too, a lot of people only want to be Osage or Indian for the financial advantages of being Indian. I see people all the time. I can go down to the cafe here and someone cut me. My family needs help. They need to go. They need help to go to college. Need help for this. How do I get them signed up? I said, well, I don't know. I said, go up there to the agency. I guess they have an office that will help you do that. Well, they really. That's all they. I said, well, what about being who they are? Well, they really need the help right now. So they're not concerned with culture. They're not concerned with identity. They're not concerned with anything else. Just the financial advantages of it. And if you think about this, is that there's a lot of people that are taking advantage of our programs that we have. Our programs are for everybody. Just saying this is a type of identity. That doesn't mean that they're wrong or right. It just means that that's their identity. That's all I want to be. I don't want any more than that. I have other identities, and that's fine with me. And the last one I have is Wakilai Nikashia. Wakilai is payment. You know that. And so this person is that they're only Osage because of Wakilai, because they get payment. And generally, this is the person who will say, I'm related to so-and-so, they were original Lottie. Well, everybody was original Lottie. We're all descendants of original Lotties. We wouldn't be here if we weren't. So that's their identity. Simply is that this check. I get this check, and that's all that I care about. It's not enough, I don't think. I think I should get more. But they're really not, they don't identify with us. They don't identify being Wahzhazhe. They just identify with getting the check. And that's plenty enough. That's for them. They really not in position to adapt to Osage culture. They don't live around us. They don't live here. They live probably East Coast, West Coast, somewhere. But to them, it's just not an issue. And this is, I think also they like to read books about Osages, see things about us. But overall, that's their identity. So if you think about this, as you go back home, is which one are you? What is your identity? Are you the Wano Oka Nikashia? Are you that one? Are you traditional? Is that who you are? Are you the one that is Seta Nikashia, New Age? There's nothing wrong with any of these. I'm just saying these are just different types of identities that we don't ever take into account. Yeah, I like to come to dances. I enjoy dancing. But other than that, I don't really care to do anything. It's too far. They don't have the language classes close to me. I can't take them. Or the classes are always closed. So it's just not convenient. Mazeska, Nikashia, everybody likes the programs. Everybody likes that. But if that's your only identity, and that's all you have. And then finally is that what we're seeing kind of changing now is the wakila, and that is those who get payment. So it's something to ponder. Which one are you? And which one do you want to be? I guess that would be today to ask yourself, well, what do I want to be? Is that what type of identity would I like to achieve? Hopefully, it's the one that is the traditional one. Is that because we can all learn more? I'm not saying I know everything. I don't. I'm just like everybody else. We learn. We're never afforded full competency. Is that it's something that goes on and on. It's a lifetime. And is that maybe down at the end of the lifetime I'll have achieved it, but right now we don't. Is that it's constant learning. Events occur, things occur that causes us to question. Sometimes we have to ask, what we're going to do. I wish my folks were here, they could answer that question for me. But we don't have that luxury anymore. So these are things that are coming up now. These are new things that are coming up. There's an order we follow for everything. So if we're having some type of ceremony, is that, the order tends to change now. And we try to keep it in order. But sometimes there's things that don't allow that. So we have to continuously try to find out ways to maintain and keep our identity and keep our ways going. So where would you rank yours? I mean, which is most important to you? I mean, would you say that, would we think that being traditional is important to me? I mean, that's just something you have to ask yourself. Or even like your children or your family, is that what's important to them? Is it important for them to learn these things? Is it important for you to teach this to them? Or is that, we lose a lot of our people to, our multiple tribes. And they are enrolled with other tribes because they have better advantages. And so we lose a lot. So that's the thing we need to think about. I think as not only as ourselves here, but also as a tribe. What should we do? And that is what we're getting back into now. Because when we get into this loss of identity, that's what causes these stressors. That's what causes these experiences that we have. And how we're going to find them. Well, it's nothing. I was in a ceremony, and I heard one of our elders saying that was conducting, said, we've got the white man's disease, but his cure doesn't work for us. So that's where we got to start going back and looking at our own ways. We have ways of healing today, contemporary. We have our churches that are all here. We have people who are available that knows how to do these things that we can go to. So our old people, they were like our traditional counselors. They were counselors. As I shared with you what my grandmother said, they knew all these things before we did. They had an interaction with this environment that we don't have. They understand it. So we're trying to do that. Like I said, we can't express these things the way they did because we don't have the vocabulary. But we can try the best we can, and we can use today's theories to allow us to help us to understand that more. So that's kind of the basis we're beginning here, looking at what identity is. And that's what we carry around with us every day. And it comes in question, no matter what. When you engage with other people, just like I was sharing with you, when my colleagues in graduate school will start questioning me, I had a choice. I could either meld into that culture be appropriate like they were and lead my culture, or I could create my culture and wind up offending everybody, or I could start looking at ways of doing both. Before I came back to Oklahoma, I was teaching at the University of Texas, El Paso, and everyone there spoke Spanish. It was in El Paso, Texas, obviously, and the only time they spoke English was in my classroom. Everyone spoke Spanish. Everyone was Mexican American or Mexican. There was no concept of American Indians there. There were Indian people, but they were the ones selling chiclets in Juarez. So that wasn't a very positive image. So that's the point. As I was down there, I started becoming socialized. I started, I spoke Spanish. I had taken years in Spanish. And then because everybody spoke it, I found myself, I started to merge into that culture. And I had a choice. I thought, I could stay here and become Mexican American. I was accepted. And I liked it. I loved it down there. It was great. And I thought, if I do, I'm not going to go home. Because that was what I was talking about earlier. You have to have somebody else to interact with to allow this identity to grow, to allow it to function. That's what we call it. Doing, being, becoming. I can't be this without you. I can't become better at it without you. And the same way with you, you can't do it without me. And so that's why we have to have this ongoing interaction. We have to have these discussions. We have to have this. We have to teach this. And so I found when I was down there, that's what I was comfortable with. And then ultimately, I thought, well, I better start practicing up on my Wahzhazhe. I was speaking Spanish quite a bit down there. And we all know I count Dabri. I said Dabri. I wrote my R's. I've been here too long. I think I'm going to go home. And but that was an example of how I started merging into that, and we're going to do that everywhere we go. So if we don't have other people around us to acknowledge and to engage in us, we lose that identity. We are ideal here. We can be Wahzhazhe every day. We can interact with everyone. We have that ability. We can have humor. Even our humor is cultural specific. I was in grad school, I was talking about this with my professor. What about humor? I said, oh yeah, that's really different. And they said, well, how? I couldn't answer it. I said, I don't know, it just is. But if you think about it, is that it's unique. And I was on the phone yesterday talking to someone from a different office. Nacy talked to me, and he said, well, some people are coming down to your talk. And I told them to ask you really hard questions. And I'm like, I don't know how to take that. Is this guy trying to be funny? I never met him. Is he disrespecting me? Or what? But the whole point was, I questioned his identity right off the bat. I said, well, I don't think you're one of us if you're going to talk to me like that. And this is why I never met. So this is what we're talking about. It's just engaging. We're engaging all the time. And so as we develop, as we go along. So this is our identity, and this is what we carry on. And I was sharing with you from my examples of being down in El Paso, is that it creates conflict with us. And you all might have heard this, is that it creates a lot of conflict, and how do we resolve conflict? Is that we start from looking for some other way, something else to solve it. And so that's where the negative behaviors come in. We start engaging in things. We start engaging in negative practices. We start doubting. We start questioning. We go into depression. We have depression. We have anxiety. All these elements come from when our identity is questioned. When our identity starts being questioned, then we go into like this tailspin. And how do we come out of it? Well, there are certain ways that we go back and we reinforce of our traditional ways. We may go to someone and say, I'm having some difficulty. Can you help me with this? Someone who has appropriate credentials in our Indian way of how to take care of these things. We're kind of getting away from these things too. A while back, you had to be authorized to conduct any type of ceremony among our Osage people. Just anybody couldn't do it. And I remember when I first started doing things, somebody said, well, who authorized you? And that we had to be authorized. But now, it seems like the New Agers is that it doesn't make any difference, is that I can do it. And so, but you have to learn these things, and it has to be done in an appropriate manner. So we have ways of helping. And what we go into, we call cognitive dissonance, is that when we have this negative impact coming upon us, is that we question everything. We question who we are. And how do I resolve this? Is that by going back and reinforcing our appropriate behaviors. And that happens. For example, like I was sharing with you, the notion of when people were getting up and leaving. I mean, that's a very important part of our Osage culture, is that being respectful and showing up and being there and to witness. But when people get up and leave, is that was right there is causing dissonance. Is that, well, what do we do? What do we do now? Well, either you learn how to do it appropriately or you leave. And so we're starting to find a lot of things about this out now. And so our identity, it shapes our perceptions of the world. It shapes how we see things, how we see others, how we see ourselves. It affects the decisions that we make. It affects everything that we do. It affects other people. If I'm having some difficulty with my identity, then you're definitely going to find out about it, because the way that I interact with you and the way that I treat others is going to become apparent. And so that's when we start finding out, and that's what we need to do. So my suggestion would be is to start utilizing our traditional healers. We have ways to do that. I know sometimes that they used to have a sweat ceremony, but that wasn't Osage. I don't know if y'all know that. We have an Osage sweat, but that's only used in conjunction with our Native American church. It's only used at certain times. But we have other ways. We have certain ways that we can pray for people. We have ways that we can heal through psychological, whatever we need to do. So we have all these avenues. They are there, and they're not hidden. They're not put away. They're available to anyone who appropriately needs help. And that's what we're seeing we're going towards now. That's one of the things that I think that I would encourage our tribe to do, is start looking into these areas and start finding or talking to people who are knowledge of these healing procedures. Because I shared with you before, I believe that since we have the white man's disease, but it's just not curing us. We need to utilize our own types of healing. And so these are the things that we see as we go into our identity. It's crucial. A positive sense of self is crucial for us to be successful, to be happy, to enjoy life. Is all these things are important to us. But how do we attain that? And that is learning. We have to learn, because remember, identity is not inherent. It has to be taught. And so that's one of the problems that we talk about. Well, why isn't these things being taught? Because we really didn't have the opportunity before. Is that we had our elders who were there to teach us, who were there to take care of these things. Now we're getting to where we don't have hardly any elders at all. So now we got to step up. Now we've got to start doing things on our own. And so these are things that we need to start looking into. We need to offer a sense of belonging, and like you heard before, is that a lot of people who don't live here don't have a connection to us. But how do they have a connection to us? Well, that's what we're talking about. Talks about identity. You've got to assess your identity, and you've got to find out, what do I want? How do I see myself, and what do I want to see myself in the future? And how do I attain this? And that's something that we need to answer those questions also. So these are all things that we need to do. So it's something as simple as identity. It's crucial to all of us, is that it affects everything that we do. And if you reflect, it's in your life, your families, they taught, implicitly how you're going to be. My grandparents were arranged marriage. And arranged marriage, read about or maybe heard about, they weren't based upon love. They were just based upon background, who you were. And my grandmother, she used to say, I was a child bride. She was 13 when she got married. And they were together throughout their life. But it was, so by being socialized in that environment, it kind of had an effect upon me. Is that I'd be, my grandmother and I would watch TV or something. We had one channel back then in those days. And then she'd go, oh, I can't stand that. Couple kissing on TV. And so I found that happened to me. I go, I can't stand that either. Even today, I look away if there's what they call PDA going on TV. I can't look at that because that was just the impact that it had on my childhood trauma. But also it had an impact upon my interpersonal relationships from there. I couldn't hold hands. I didn't hug. That was just not done in my household because of arranged marriage. And then finally found out later on, there's a good way to balance this out so it can work. So these is, I said, just the impact of how we're socialized, what your parents felt, what they see creates you. The positive things that your parents did, the way your rituals, when you eat, you pray, whatever you do, that has an impact upon you. And that's what we're trying to do, is that to be able to create this of being Wahzhazhe to all of our people, and particularly to our younger people, and to allow them to, our children to know, to grow up, this is who you are. This is how to be who you are. This is what you are. And so by being a what, it's just like not enough. We can emulate behavior, like we can see somebody dance, but if we don't know why they're doing that, then it doesn't mean anything to us. So that's the other key part, is to find understanding of what these behaviors are. What does this mean? What does a handshake mean? What does our leave take, when we leave, our rituals? What does this mean? It's conveying something. Like, when you say goodbye to something, that very simple act in Western culture is that I'm leaving, I'm being appropriate, I'm not being rude, and I'm leaving the door open for further interaction. Well, that's what we do too. When we leave, we're saying something, we're doing it appropriately. And we have words for that. Like I said, if we didn't have a word for something, it wouldn't exist. If you're aware of this, but in Wahzhazhe, we don't have a word for cousin. That concept does not exist in our culture, in our identity. And some of you, if you were around here, you grew up and you you couldn't date anybody because you were related to everybody. And that's because we don't have cousins. Everybody is either a brother or sister, aunt, uncle. That's all the expressions that we have. And our relationship with all the elements. That's what our clans are. We have relationship with the sky, with the earth. These are all things that we have. This comes through our language. This comes through who we are. And look at the word we do. We are monotheistic. We believe in one God. We have a word for God. But then we learned about Jesus. Then we created a word for Jesus. So we have all these concepts. We have all this. But is that we need to understand why, where did that come from? And that's where it alleviates the stress that we do have. And so we all have that, identity. When you wake up, sometimes you feel frustrated, or particularly right now, during election years, but why can't they do this? Why can't they do that? Well, they're rather looking for why can't they? We can look at, let's figure out some way to help them do this. Or what can I do to help them make it better? So that's where this important part of your part comes in identity, is seeking out, finding out, is that where do I fit within this? How do I fit? And what do I want to be? So I hope this is a question that some of you will carry with you from out of here, and you'll say, what was this talk about? He said, what's your identity? Are you a traditional old folks identity? Are you a pavement identity? Are you new age? What are you? And if so, what do you want to be? And I think that's the key element here, is look at what do I want to be? And how do I achieve that? And I think that will help us go a long ways and start helping out in the terms of what we have in terms of those who are seeking, and they're having difficulties with this. So I think that's all the time we had. Enough.
Right.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, Dr. Pratt, for your expertise. I know we'll all definitely take something away from this today. Many of you can tell with contemporary culture today, especially with the Killers of the Flower Moon being out, there's somewhat of a cultural identity awakening for many of our young people across the nation. They're seeing this movie and they're seeing these actors. Thankful I actually have one of the stars of the movie with us right now, my Uncle E. Right there, stole the show. Yeah. And,
I carried him.
sure enough, carried him.
They wanted it to be real, and I gave them real.
He did, and that's what we're trying to give today is a real piece of culture today. That's what these individuals, these young people, even some older people, that they're looking for. They're looking for a small piece of home, and this is a series that we're looking to host once again, and we're going to move to a different district and have an elder from that specific area give a talk again, and because each district has their own way that they define their identity, the way that they define each and every different culture that we have. And for those of us that are around, we notice these subtle differences, and that's what we're aiming to kind of teach everyone, to show everyone that just because Zonzoli said this that way, Basoli is going to say it a different way. Wahzhazhe is going to say it even different from that. But we're trying to put together an amalgamation of something from all three that offers one sense of Wahzhazhe identity. All the good things from each and every district that we can all identify with, that all make us one. And that was the purpose of today's talk, and I'm very appreciative of everybody that came here, and we hope to see you again soon. We're gonna have we have a light little snack. We have some smoked bologna and some Jello. I think my aunt Anita brought. She fixed it for us. Everybody has to have a piece. It's, I don't know if you guys know, but it's like Jello cake, isn't it? It looks like Jello cake. Is that what it is?
Got a lot of sweet things in
Yeah.
there.
We'll call it Jello cake. So Osage culture is rude to refuse the cake. So this is our cake. So everybody have a piece. If you don't eat it, push it around. So, yeah. Before we get to move on to that, Uncle E, we say a little something for our food over here, and then we'll go ahead and run over it.
I appreciate just a moment to talk to you all. First time I come over here, my sister Stephen and us had to set up bales. We danced out there on the bricks. We had the drum. That's how I learned. I was at Buck Creek Meeting House with Walter Maiden. That's McCarthy's group. And they were special people, but they weren't no special than my mother. Come and taught us something. And Steve's right on it. I know everything about it, especially this hardship. No one in this room's got as many murdered cousins as I do. And I know that they would love to be here. Their children would love to still have it. So that's how come you think this is just a prayer or talk? Not to me, it's not. I have to keep them every morning. But what I am going to say is that we've got to get our children collected. You wait by 20 or 15, that's too late. Somehow we've got to condense this in to where they feel so happy to be themselves early. Because you're up against everything that's evil as far as traditions go. So I will just tell you this. I love these people in this room. I grew up with some of you. Some of you are my nieces and nephews. You're going to be our replacements. And I tell you right now, it's going to be tough. But you stay with it. Because as my grandmother said, if it's easy, hell, everybody do it. So you keep it up because she was the last one marked into our society. And they said, give that up. Go with what Dr. Pratt's talking about. Elonska, we concept. And this prayer. And that's what I'd like to do now. Wakanda.